With the human prisoners safely evacuated, Admiral Reeves was free to pursue her primary objective, the destruction of the Gruk fleet. But the aliens were not going to give up without a fight. Warlord Vashka had regrouped his remaining ships into a defensive formation around the planet, using the world's gravity well to his advantage. "He's smart," admitted Commander Park. "By staying close to the planet, he's forcing us to fight on his terms. We can't use our speed advantage in a gravity well." Reeves studied the tactical display, looking for any weakness in the alien formation. The Gruk had approximately 150 ships remaining, still outnumbering the human fleet by more than 3 to 1. "What about the mining operations?" she asked. "Are they still active?" "The orbital elevators are down, but the surface installations are still operational," Park replied. "Why?" Reeves smiled grimly. "Because those installations are powered by fusion reactors. Very large, very unstable fusion reactors." The implications hit Park immediately. "You want to overload the reactors? Create a chain reaction that will damage the Gruk ships?" "Exactly. But we'll need to get close enough to the planet to target the reactors precisely. That means running the gauntlet of the entire Gruk fleet." It was a desperate gamble, but Reeves couldn't see any other option. The human fleet was running low on ammunition and fuel, and they couldn't afford a prolonged battle of attrition. "All ships, prepare for final assault," she announced. "We're going to punch through their formation and target the surface installations. It's going to be rough, but it's our only chance to end this." The human fleet formed up in a tight formation, their strongest ships in the lead to absorb the initial enemy fire. As they approached the Gruk defensive line, the aliens opened fire with everything they had. "Multiple hits on the Defiant," reported the damage control officer. "Shield generators are down to 40%. "Hold course," Reeves ordered. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead Gruk vessels. Clear us a path." The human fleet smashed into the alien formation like a hammer, their concentrated firepower punching a hole in the Gruk defensive line. But the cost was severe. The cruiser Determination exploded in a brilliant flash of light, and the destroyer Valiant was dead in space, its crew evacuating in emergency pods. "We're through," reported Commander Park. "Clear shot to the surface installations. All ships target the fusion reactors," Reeves ordered. "Maximum firepower. We're only going to get one chance at this." The human fleet opened fire on the massive industrial complexes that dotted New Eden's surface. The fusion reactors, already unstable from the orbital bombardment, began to overload under the concentrated assault. "Reactor 1 is going critical," reported the science officer. "Chain reaction in progress." The first explosion lit up the planet's surface like a miniature sun, its shockwave rippling outward to engulf the nearby Gruk installations. Then the second reactor went, and the third, until the entire northern hemisphere was ablaze with nuclear fire. The Gruk ships, caught in the expanding wave of destruction, began to burn and break apart. Warlord Vashka's flagship, the massive dreadnought Bone Crusher, was engulfed in the inferno, its hull cracking like an egg. "The enemy fleet is in full retreat," reported Commander Park, her voice filled with awe. "Those that can still move are heading for the edge of the system." Admiral Reeves allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had defeated the Gruk invasion fleet and saved the survivors of New Eden. But even as she celebrated their victory, she knew this was only the beginning. The Gruk Imperium was vast, and humanity had just made a very dangerous enemy. The aftermath of the battle revealed the true cost of humanity's first interstellar war. Of the 47 ships that had departed Earth, only 23 remained operational. The casualty reports made grim reading. Over 8,000 human naval personnel had died in the fighting, and the survivors of New Eden had lost nearly half their population during the months of Gruk occupation. Admiral Reeves stood in the ruins of what had once been New Eden's Central Plaza, surrounded by the wreckage of 30 years of human achievement. The colony that had been humanity's shining example of interstellar expansion was now a scarred wasteland, its domes shattered and its gardens burned. The Gruk stripped everything of value, reported Dr. Chin, who had insisted on returning to the surface despite her ordeal. The rare earth deposits are gone, the agricultural systems are destroyed, and the atmospheric processors are beyond repair. But the people survived, Reeves replied. That's what matters. Sarah nodded, though her expression remained haunted. Some of us, anyway. The Grok were efficient in their use of human labor. They worked people to death and replaced them with new prisoners. If you hadn't come when you did. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Reeves had read the reports of the prison camps, the forced labor, and the casual brutality of the Grok occupation. The aliens had treated humans as nothing more than disposable tools, useful only as long as they could work. What about the Grok? Sarah asked. Are they gone? The invasion fleet is destroyed, Reeves confirmed. But their homeworld is still out there, and they know about us now. This was just the first battle in what's going to be a long war. The implications of that statement hung heavy in the air. Humanity had won a victory, but they had also revealed their existence to a hostile alien empire. The Grok would be back, and next time they would be prepared for human technology and tactics. Admiral, interrupted Commander Park, approaching with a tablet full of data. We've completed our analysis of the Grok ships. Their technology is roughly equivalent to ours, but they have some advantages in armor and energy weapons. More importantly, their manufacturing capacity appears to be enormous. How enormous? Reeves asked. Based on the industrial debris we found, they can build ships at a rate of approximately 10 to 1 compared to our shipyards. If we're going to have any chance in a prolonged conflict, we need to find ways to leverage our technological advantages. Reeves nodded grimly. Humanity had always been outnumbered in the galaxy, but they had never faced an enemy that could match their technology while also possessing superior numbers. The war with the Grok would test every aspect of human ingenuity and determination. What about the other colonies? She asked. We've sent warning messages to all human settlements, Park replied. Wolf 359 is building additional defenses, and the research station at Tau Ceti is being evacuated. But if the Grok decide to launch a coordinated attack on multiple targets, we can't be everywhere at once, Reeves finished. We need to make some hard choices about what we can and can't defend. As the two officers discussed tactical options, Sarah walked away from the group, her mind filled with memories of what New Eden had been before the Grok came. The colony had been more than just a settlement, it had been a symbol of humanity's future among the stars, proof that they could build something beautiful and lasting in the vast darkness of space. Now it was gone, reduced to rubble and ash by an alien empire that saw humans as nothing more than resources to be exploited. But the people survived, and with them, the memory of what they had built. We'll rebuild, she said quietly, speaking to the empty air. Somewhere else somehow. We'll rebuild, and we'll be ready for them next time. The journey back to Earth was a somber affair. The human fleet, battered and bloody from their first encounter with the Grok, limped through hyperspace carrying the survivors of New Eden and the weight of hard-won knowledge about their alien enemies. Admiral Reeves spent much of the journey in her quarters, poring over the tactical reports and trying to prepare for the questions she would face when they reached Earth. The victory at Alpha Centauri had been costly, and she knew there would be those who questioned whether it had been worth the price. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1. Reeves made her way to the bridge, where the main screen displayed the familiar logo of the United Earth Government. The face that appeared belonged to Secretary General Harrison Wells, the political leader of humanity's scattered colonies. Admiral Reeves, Wells began, his expression grave. We've received your preliminary reports. The entire solar system is in shock at the news of the Grok invasion. I need to know, are we at war? Yes, Mr. Secretary, Reeves replied without hesitation. The Grok Imperium has made it clear that they view humanity as a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. There's no possibility of peaceful coexistence. Wells absorbed this information with visible difficulty. The economic implications alone are staggering. We'll need to mobilize the entire industrial capacity of the solar system to build a fleet capable of defending our colonies. That's just the beginning, Reeves warned. Based on what we've learned about Gruk technology and tactics, we need to assume they're already planning their next move. They won't make the same mistakes twice. What do you recommend? Reeves had been thinking about this question for weeks. We need to accelerate the colony defense program and develop new weapons specifically designed to counter Gruk technology. But more importantly, we need to find allies. The Gruk have conquered dozens of worlds. There have to be other species that would be willing to fight alongside us. Aliens helping humanity? Wells looked skeptical. That's quite a leap from our first contact experience. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, Reeves replied. The Gruk have made enemies throughout the galaxy. If we can find them and convince them to join us, we might have a chance. The conversation continued for another hour, covering everything from industrial production to military strategy. When it finally ended, Reeves felt the weight of her responsibilities more keenly than ever. She was no longer just a naval officer, she was one of the architects of humanity's survival in a hostile galaxy. Admiral, said Commander Park, approaching with a tablet. The survivors have elected a representative council. They want to speak with you. Reeves nodded and made her way to the main assembly hall, where the survivors of New Eden had gathered. Their faces bore the marks of their ordeal, physical scars from forced labor, psychological trauma from months of captivity, and the haunted look of people who had lost everything they had worked to build. Sarah Chin stepped forward as their spokesperson. Admiral, we wanted to thank you for what you did. You saved our lives, and we'll never forget that. I'm sorry we couldn't save everyone, Reeves replied. I'm sorry we couldn't save your world. New Eden was more than just a place, Sarah said. It was an idea, the idea that humanity could spread among the stars and build something beautiful. The Grok destroyed the colony, but they couldn't destroy the idea. What will you do now? Reeves asked. Sarah looked around at her fellow survivors, drawing strength from their presence. We're going to rebuild. Not on Alpha Centauri, that world is poisoned now. But somewhere else, somewhere the Grok haven't touched. We're going to build a new colony, and this time we'll be ready for them. Reeves felt a surge of admiration for these people who had endured so much but refused to give up. They embodied the best of humanity, the determination to keep building, keep growing, keep reaching for the stars no matter what obstacles they faced. When you do, she said, the fleet will be there to protect you. That's a promise. Chapter 18, The New Reality. Earth had changed by the time the fleet returned. The news of the Gruk invasion had transformed human society from a peaceful, exploration-focused civilization into a militaristic state preparing for interstellar war. The shipyards of Luna and Mars worked around the clock, building vessels designed for combat rather than exploration. Admiral Reeves stood before the assembled representatives of the United Earth government, delivering her after-action report on the Battle of Alpha Centauri. The politicians and military leaders listened in grim silence, as she described the capabilities of the Gruk fleet and the challenges humanity would face in the coming conflict. The Gruk are not just another species, she concluded. They're a galactic empire with the resources and technology to threaten every human settlement in known space. We can't simply defend our colonies, we need to take the fight to them. That's a massive undertaking, observed Defense Minister Sarah Rodriguez. The cost would be enormous, and the risks of inaction are greater, Reeves interrupted. The Gruk now know the location of our colonies and the extent of our capabilities. They'll be back, and next time they'll be prepared for our tactics. Our only chance is to strike first. The debate that followed was intense and sometimes heated. Some representatives argued for a purely defensive strategy, while others advocated for immediate offensive action. The survivors of New Eden, led by Sarah Chin, provided testimony about the true nature of the Gruk threat. They don't see us as equals, Sarah told the assembly. They see us as animals to be domesticated or resources to be consumed. There's no negotiating with them, no compromise. It's us or them. In the end, the decision was made to proceed with a massive military expansion program. The colonies would be fortified, new weapons would be developed, and humanity would prepare for the next phase of the war. But even as the politicians made their plans, Admiral Reeves knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Gruk would not remain passive while humanity built up its defenses. They would strike again, and when they did, the survival of the human species would hang in the balance. 6 months after the Battle of Alpha Centauri, the warning signs were everywhere. Long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements in Gruk space, and the alien empire's industrial output had increased dramatically. Intelligence reports suggested that the Gruk were not just rebuilding their forces, they were preparing for a war of annihilation. Admiral Reeves, now promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of all human military forces, stood in the war room of the newly constructed Titan Defense Station. The facility, built in the outer reaches of the solar system, served as the nerve center for humanity's defensive preparations. The Gruk are massing ships at 3 different staging areas, reported Intelligence Director Marcus Kane. Based on their formation patterns, we believe they're planning simultaneous attacks on Wolf 359, Barnard Star, and possibly Earth itself. Numbers? Reeves asked. Conservative estimates suggest they have over 1,000 ships, Kane replied. That's more than 3 times the size of the fleet that attacked New Eden. The implications were staggering. Despite their victory at Alpha Centauri, humanity now faced an enemy that had learned from their mistakes and was preparing to strike with overwhelming force. What about our allies? Asked Commander Park, who had been promoted to serve as Reeves' strategic advisor. The Kethmoran delegation is still considering our proposal, Kane replied. They're one of the few species that has successfully resisted Gruk expansion, but they're hesitant to commit to an alliance. The Veltar are more interested, but their military capabilities are limited. Reeves nodded grimly. The search for allies had been one of her top priorities, but most of the species they had contacted were either too weak to be useful or too afraid of the Gruk to risk retaliation. Admiral, interrupted Communications Officer Torres. We're receiving a transmission from the Kepler 442 system. It's one of our deep space monitoring stations. Put it through, Reeves ordered. The voice that crackled through the speakers was tense with fear. This is Commander Lisa Park at Monitor Station 7. We're detecting a massive Gruk fleet moving toward the Wolf 359 system. Estimated arrival time is 36 hours. God, there are so many of them. Reeves felt her blood run cold. The Gruk were moving faster than expected, and their target was one of humanity's most important colonies. Get me a direct line to Wolf 359, she ordered. Alert all fleet commanders. The war is about to begin again. The Battle of Wolf 359 was everything the defenders had feared and more. The Gruk fleet, numbering over 400 ships, struck the human colony with devastating efficiency. The orbital defense platforms, stronger than those that had protected New Eden, held out for less than 6 hours before being overwhelmed. Admiral Reeves watched the battle unfold from the command center of the Defiant, her flagship now part of a relief fleet racing to assist the colony. But they were too far away, and the Gruk were moving too fast. The colonial fleet is fighting hard, reported Commander Park. But they're outnumbered 10-1. The Wolverine and Stalwart are already down, and the Titan is venting atmosphere. How long can they hold? Reeves asked. At current rate of attrition, maybe another 4 hours, Park replied. But the Gruk are learning from their mistakes. They're not giving the colonists time to organize an evacuation. Reeves felt the familiar weight of command pressing down on her. Every decision she made would have consequences that rippled across human space, and she was running out of good options. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Torres. We're receiving a transmission from the colony. It's Governor Martinez. The image that appeared on the main screen showed a man in his 60s, his face streaked with blood and his uniform torn. Behind him, explosions lit up the night sky as the Gruk fleet bombarded the colony's defenses. Admiral Reeves, Martinez said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. We can't hold them much longer. The orbital platforms are down, and they're landing troops on the surface. We need immediate evacuation. Governor, we're 12 hours out, Reeves replied. Can you hold until then? Martinez shook his head. Negative. They'll have overrun the colony by then. Admiral, I'm ordering the activation of the Scorched Earth Protocol. We're going to deny them the resources they came for. Reeves felt her heart sink. The Scorched Earth Protocol was a last resort, the complete destruction of all colonial infrastructure to prevent its capture by enemy forces. It would save the colony's resources from falling into Gruk hands, but it would also destroy any hope of rebuilding. Governor, are you sure? She asked. There's no choice, Martinez replied. If we let them take our industrial facilities, they'll use them to build more ships. We have to think about the bigger picture. The transmission cut out as the Colonial Command Center was hit by a Gruk energy weapon. Moments later, the entire planet lit up with nuclear fire as the colonists activated their self-destruct systems. Wolf 359 is gone, reported Commander Park quietly. The colony, the fleet, everything. But the Gruk won't be getting any resources from the wreckage. Reeves stared at the tactical display, watching the Gruk fleet withdraw from the burning planet. They had won another victory, but it was a hollow one. The human colonists had denied them the prize they had come for, but at the cost of their own lives. Set course for Barnard's Star, Reeves ordered. If the Gruk are following their pattern, that's where they'll strike next. The defense of Barnard's Star became the defining moment of the Second Gruk War. Unlike the previous battles, humanity was ready this time. The colony had been fortified with the latest defensive systems, and Admiral Reeves had positioned her fleet to intercept the Gruk invasion force before it could reach the planet. Enemy fleet detected, reported Commander Park as the human ships dropped out of hyperspace. 250 vessels, approaching in standard attack formation. Reeves studied the tactical display, looking for any weakness in the alien formation. The Gruk had learned from their previous encounters with human forces, but so had humanity. New weapons, new tactics, and new allies would make this battle different. Signal the Kethmoran fleet, she ordered. Tell them it's time to honor their agreement. The main screen flickered as a new group of ships appeared on the sensors. The Kethmoran vessels were unlike anything in human or Gruk fleets, sleek, organic-looking ships that seemed to ripple and flow as they moved through space. The Kethmoran are in position, reported the communications officer. They're ready to engage. Reeves felt a surge of hope. The Kethmoran were veteran warriors who had been fighting the Gruk for centuries. Their ships were fast and maneuverable, designed for hit-and-run tactics that would complement human firepower. All ships prepare for battle, she announced. Today we show the Gruk that humanity is not alone in this galaxy. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen in previous engagements. The combined human Kethmoran fleet attacked the Gruk formation from multiple angles, their coordinated tactics overwhelming the alien defenses. The Gruk, accustomed to fighting lone species, struggled to adapt to the Alliance's combined strategies. Direct hits on the Gruk flagship, reported Commander Park. Their command structure is in chaos. But the Gruk were not easily defeated. Even as their formation began to break apart, they continued to fight with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. The human cruiser Vengeance exploded in a brilliant flash of light, and 2 Kethmoran vessels were crippled by alien energy weapons. The Gruk are retreating, Park announced. They're falling back to regroup. Reeves allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. For the first time since the war began, humanity and its allies had achieved a decisive victory. The Gruk invasion force was shattered, their ships limping back toward their own territory. Signal all ships, she ordered. We're going to pursue them. It's time to take the fight to the Gruk homeworld. The victory at Barnard's Star had consequences that rippled across the galaxy. Species that had been cowed by Gruk expansion began to reach out to humanity, seeking alliance against their common enemy. The war that had begun as a desperate struggle for survival was becoming a galactic revolution. Admiral Reeves stood before the assembled representatives of the fledgling Galactic Alliance, a coalition of species united by their opposition to Gruk imperialism. The meeting was taking place aboard the massive space station Unity, constructed in the neutral zone between human and Kethmoran space. The Gruk Empire is vast, she told the assembled delegates. But it's not invincible. They've grown complacent, accustomed to easy victories against isolated opponents. For the first time in centuries, they're facing coordinated resistance. The delegates, representing dozens of species with wildly different biologies and cultures, listened intently as Reeves outlined the Alliance's strategic plan. The goal was ambitious, a coordinated assault on the Gruk homeworld itself, designed to cripple their war machine and force them to negotiate. The risks are enormous, cautioned Ambassador Velkara of the Kethmoran. The Gruk homeworld is heavily fortified, and they have reserve fleets stationed throughout their territory. Even if we succeed, the costs will be substantial. The cost of failure is higher, replied Sarah Chen, who had become one of the Alliance's most effective advocates. The Gruk will never stop expanding. They'll consume world after world until the galaxy is empty of free peoples. The debate that followed was intense but productive. Each species brought unique capabilities to the Alliance. The Kethmoran had speed and agility, the Veltar possessed advanced sensor technology, and the ZH Karen contributed powerful energy weapons. Humanity offered industrial capacity and tactical innovation. We have one advantage the Gruk don't expect, observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had become the Alliance's chief xenobiologist. Diversity. They're a monoculture, accustomed to thinking in rigid patterns. We represent dozens of different ways of approaching problems. As the meeting progressed, Reeves found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this point. It had begun with a desperate message from a dying colony, but it had evolved into something greater, a chance to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Alliance was fragile, held together by necessity rather than shared values. But it was growing stronger with each victory, each new member species, each successful joint operation against Gruk forces. The final assault on the Gruk homeworld will require everything we have, Reeves told the assembled delegates. But if we succeed, we'll have proven that free peoples can stand together against tyranny. The galaxy will never be the same. The approach to the Gruk homeworld was a journey through a graveyard of civilizations. The Alliance fleet passed system after system that had been stripped of life by the relentless expansion of the Gruk Empire. Dead worlds orbited dying stars, their surfaces scarred by mining operations and industrial complexes. 15 star systems, reported Commander Park as she studied the sensor readings. All of them former alien colonies, all of them reduced to resource extraction sites. The Gruk have been busy. Admiral Reeves nodded grimly as she studied the tactical display. The Alliance fleet now numbered over 800 ships, representing 37 different species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy, but she knew it might not be enough. Status report on the Gruk defenses? She asked. Their homeworld is protected by a network of defense platforms and automated weapons systems, Park replied. Conservative estimates suggest they have over 2,000 defensive installations, plus whatever fleet units they have in reserve. The numbers were sobering, but Reeves had learned not to be intimidated by Gruk numerical superiority. The Alliance had advantages the aliens couldn't match: tactical flexibility, technological diversity, and the desperation of people fighting for their freedom. Signal the fleet commanders, she ordered. We're going to implement the Prometheus Protocol. The Prometheus Protocol was the Alliance's most ambitious strategy, developed through months of planning and simulation. Instead of a direct assault on the Gruk homeworld, the Alliance would strike at the Empire's industrial infrastructure, crippling their ability to produce new ships and weapons. The Kethmoran strike teams are in position, reported the communications officer. They're ready to begin the first phase. Reeves watched as the sleek alien ships accelerated toward their targets, massive orbital factories that produced the weapons and ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The Kethmoran vessels were perfectly suited for this kind of mission, their speed and stealth allowing them to slip past the Gruk defenses. Direct hits on orbital facilities Alpha through Gamma, Park announced. The Grok are scrambling their reserve fleets. But the Kethmoran strike was only the beginning. As the Grok forces moved to defend their industrial installations, the main Alliance fleet struck at the homeworld's defensive network. Human ships, supported by Veltar's sensor technology and ZH-Karen energy weapons, punched through the alien defenses with devastating efficiency. The Grok are pulling back their outer perimeter, Park reported. They're consolidating around the homeworld. Reeves smiled grimly. The Grok were reacting exactly as the Alliance had hoped. By threatening their industrial base, they had forced the aliens to abandon their aggressive expansion and focus on defense. Signal all ships, she ordered. Begin the final phase. It's time to end this war. The Grok homeworld was a nightmare of industrial excess and environmental destruction. The planet's surface was covered with massive factories, mining operations, and military installations, all connected by a network of transport tubes and energy conduits. The sky was dark with pollution, and the seas had been drained to provide cooling water for the planet's industrial complex. Admiral Reeves watched the planetary bombardment from the bridge of the Defiant, her expression grim as the Alliance fleet systematically destroyed the infrastructure of the Grok Empire. Each explosion represented years of alien conquest and exploitation, but it also meant the end of countless jobs and lives. The Grok are requesting a ceasefire, reported Commander Park. They want to negotiate. After what they did to New Eden? Reeves asked. After Wolf 359 and all the other colonies they destroyed? Admiral, interrupted Sarah Chin, who had requested permission to observe the final battle. They're beaten. Their fleet is shattered, their homeworld is burning, and their empire is collapsing. Maybe it's time to consider mercy. Reeves studied the tactical display, watching as the last Grok defense platforms were destroyed by Alliance fire. The alien empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was finally on the verge of collapse. Open a channel to the Grok fleet, she ordered. The image that appeared on the main screen was a far cry from the arrogant warlord who had threatened humanity years earlier. Warlord Vashka looked old and defeated, his scarred face bearing the marks of a leader who had lost everything. Human Admiral, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I offer the surrender of the Grok Empire. Our fleets are destroyed, our world is burning, and our people are dying. We ask for mercy. Reeves felt the weight of history pressing down on her. This was the moment that would define the future of the galaxy, the choice between vengeance and justice, between destruction and reconstruction. The Grok Empire is finished, she said finally. But the Grok people can have a future if they choose it. Surrender your remaining military assets, submit to Alliance oversight, and help us rebuild the worlds you've destroyed. In exchange, we'll help you find a new home, a new way of living that doesn't require the conquest of other species. Vashka's expression showed a mixture of relief and defeat. You would spare us? After everything we have done? We're not the Grok, Reeves replied. We don't believe in extermination. But this is your only chance. Accept our terms, or face the consequences of your actions. The alien warlord nodded slowly. The Grok Empire surrenders to the Galactic Alliance. We will abide by your terms. 5 years after the end of the Grok War, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Alliance had grown from a desperate coalition of species into a thriving interstellar government, committed to peaceful exploration and mutual cooperation. The former Grok Empire had been transformed into a network of rehabilitation colonies, where the alien warriors learned to live without conquest. Admiral Reeves, now promoted to the newly created position of Alliance Fleet Commander, stood on the observation deck of the New Eden, humanity's newest colony ship. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the blue-green world of Kepler 438b, where the survivors of the original New Eden were finally going to build their new home. It's beautiful, said Sarah Chin, who had been elected as the new colony's first administrator. The atmospheric composition is perfect, the mineral resources are abundant, and the local ecosystem is compatible with human agriculture. And most importantly, added Dr. Elena Vasquez, there are no hostile aliens waiting to conquer us. Reeves smiled at the comment. The galaxy still held many mysteries and dangers, but the Alliance had proven that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The new colony would be protected by a multi-species defense fleet, and its development would be guided by the principles of sustainable growth and peaceful coexistence. "The first shuttles are ready for departure," reported Captain Morrison, Emily Morrison, who had followed in her father's footsteps and become one of the Alliance's most skilled pilots. "The colonists are eager to begin their new lives." Reeves watched as the shuttles descended toward the planet's surface, carrying the hopes and dreams of people who had lost everything but refused to give up. The new colony wouldn't be called New Eden. That name belonged to the past, to the people who had died defending humanity's first interstellar settlement. Instead, it would be called Hope, a name that reflected the spirit of the people who had survived the Gruk War and emerged stronger than ever. "Admiral," called out the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "It's Secretary General Wells." The image that appeared on the main screen showed a man who had aged considerably since the beginning of the war, but whose eyes still held the fire of determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. "Admiral Reeves," Wells said, "I wanted to congratulate you on another successful colony launch. The people of Earth are proud of what you and the Alliance have accomplished." "Thank you, Mr. Secretary," Reeves replied. "But the work is far from over. The galaxy is a big place, and there are still species out there who need our help." "I know," Wells said. "That's why I'm announcing the creation of the Alliance Exploration Service. We're going to continue expanding into the galaxy, but this time we'll be doing it as partners, not conquerors." Reeves felt a surge of pride at the announcement. The Alliance Exploration Service would embody everything they had fought for: the belief that different species could work together, that the galaxy was big enough for everyone, and that cooperation was stronger than conflict. "The Gruk taught us that the galaxy can be a dangerous place," she said. "But they also taught us that we're stronger together than we are apart. The Alliance will continue to grow, and will face whatever challenges come our way." As the transmission ended, Reeves looked out at the stars scattered across the darkness of space. Each point of light represented a potential new home, a new chance for peace and prosperity. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to explore it as part of a community of free peoples. The war was over. The future had begun. 50 years after the last signal from New Eden, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Alliance had grown to include over 100 species, and the principles of cooperation and mutual respect had replaced the old patterns of conquest and exploitation. On the World of Hope, a memorial stood in the center of the capital city, commemorating the 50,000 people who had died in the Gruk attack on New Eden. The memorial was simple but powerful, a quantum transmitter identical to the one that had carried humanity's desperate message to Earth, surrounded by holographic displays showing the faces of those who had been lost. Sarah Chin, now elderly but still sharp, stood before the memorial with her granddaughter, explaining the significance of the monument to the young woman who had grown up in a galaxy where different species worked together instead of fighting each other. "This is where it all began," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of memory. "With a message sent into the darkness, hoping that someone would hear and respond. Your grandfather Jake was one of the people who made that transmission possible." The young woman, Emily Chin Morrison, named for both her grandmother and the pilot who had become a hero of the Alliance, listened with rapt attention. She had heard the story many times, but it never lost its power to inspire. "The Gruk thought they could conquer us because we were alone," Sarah continued. "They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons, it's our ability to reach out to others, to build bridges instead of walls." Emily nodded, understanding the lesson. She was part of the new generation, the children who had grown up in a galaxy where cooperation was the norm rather than the exception. But she also understood the importance of remembering the past, of honoring the sacrifice of those who had died to make that future possible. "Grandmother," she said, "do you think the Gruk were evil?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I think they were afraid," she said finally. "Their world was dying, and they saw conquest as their only option for survival. Fear makes people do terrible things, but it doesn't make them evil. The Alliance helped them find a better way. It was true. The former Gruk Empire had been transformed into a network of peaceful colonies, where the alien warriors had learned to channel their strength into construction rather than destruction. Warlord Vashka himself had become an unlikely advocate for peace, spending his final years working to repair the damage his empire had caused. "The important thing," Sarah said, "is that we learn from what happened. The Alliance exists because people were willing to reach out across the darkness, to send messages of hope even when everything seemed hopeless." As they walked away from the memorial, Emily looked up at the stars visible through the city's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, Alliance ships were exploring new worlds, making contact with new species, and building the foundations of an even larger community of free peoples. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was no longer alone in exploring it. The message that had once carried desperate words of warning now served as a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could bridge the gap between the stars. The last signal from New Eden had become the first word of a new age.